District City Councilor. Today is Thursday, May 4th. We are here with one of my favorite departments, the Boston Centers of Youth and Families. I started there in 1987. It was my first public service job. I have great memories, met some great people like Chris Biner here, and want to also give a shout out to the Jackson Man. That's where I started. All the folks there, Rosie, John Vitale, and the entire staff do great work in our neighborhood. So today we are here regarding the Boston Center for Youth and Families budget as it relates to dockets 0536 through 0538, orders for the fiscal year 18 operating budget, including annual appropriations for departmental operations, annual appropriation for the school department, and appropriation for other post-employment benefits. Dockets 0539 through 0543, capital budget appropriations including loan orders and lease and purchase agreements. I'd like to remind folks that this is a public hearing, both broadcast live and recorded on RCN Channel 82 as well as Comcast Channel 8. I'd ask folks in the gallery to silence any electronic devices. At the conclusion of the presentation from the department and questions from my colleagues, we will have public testimony. There is a sign-in sheet to my left. We ask that you state your name, address, and any affiliation. We will take written testimony as well through email or written letter as well. I'd like to introduce my colleagues in order of their arrival. To my left, City Councilor at Large Anissa Sabi George, and to my far left, District City Councilor Tim McCarthy. With that, welcome Commissioner and Chris and Michael to the chamber, and it's all yours.
And finance. We also have a number of BCYF staff that are here in the gallery with us today. I've been the commissioner for BCYF for a little over a year now. While we've experienced many successes this past year in our work to provide for Boston youth and families, we also will never forget the dark days we faced last summer. I would be remiss not to acknowledge that time and to also thank everyone who supported BCYF during that most difficult period, especially the council itself, council members themselves. I am honored to be here before you as the commissioner of BCYF. I also want to thank Mayor Walsh for his confidence in me and for his support of BCYF and the important work that we do. I also want to thank Chief Felix Arroyo, who has been a valuable resource and friend to BCYF and to me personally. In your packet, you have documents that are outlining our FY17 accomplishments and our FY18 initiatives. I'm going to take a minute and highlight a few of the accomplishments for you. We expanded our Summer Super Teens Employment Program that supports young people between the ages of 13 and 14 years of age to over 220 kids that were serviced at 17 community centers. This is the most ever. This is the group of population of young people who are either too cool for camp, but at the same time too young for summer jobs. We've provided them with an opportunity for a career exploration and job readiness program that we hope will pipeline into our summer works program in the future. Thanks to the hard work of our development team, BCYF street workers have received a series of grants for an innovative new approach to unrestricted funding, allowing them to cover incidental costs of trauma quickly and effectively. These funds have covered field trips and youth enrichment opportunities for more than 86 incidents of violence this year alone, providing valuable support to families in their greatest time of need. After many decades of various operating hours at our centers with no consistency, we unified the operating hours. Our review of school-based centers found that they opened early mornings to late evening, stretching staff thin over many hours, while the key programming hours in the school-based buildings were between 1 to 9. We were able to make the change of hours of BCYS school-based centers from 2 to 9 p.m. And that happened because we had deep collaborations with the council members in their respective regions. We did it in partnership with the unions, and we also did it in partnerships and having conversations with partners who utilize our buildings to get to that successful conclusion. Um, Many of our freestanding building hours also shifted in hours too as well, from 6:30 to 9 p.m. We also added weekend and Sunday hours. And data is already showing us that the change of hours have increased constituent participation in our facility. We've increased our partnerships and collaborations with fellow city departments, starting, of course, with our long-standing partner, the Boston Public School Systems, who continue to help inform the kind of programming we do to make sure that what we do in after-school setting complements what's happening in our school, in the school curriculums. Working with the Elderly Commission, we've increased programming for older Bostonians, including converting the limited space underutilized at the BCYF Grove Hall Community Center into a thriving senior center. We worked with BPD to provide a safe location for them to utilize to meet with survivors of violence. We have hosted several workshops for the Office of Women Advancement, and we continue to support the Office of Emergency Management as shelters and as operations center staff for large-scale events and weather emergencies. We worked with City Hall to Go to provide permanent space at selected centers, and we are also a crucial partner to the Boston Public Health Commission, especially this past year as they were trying to look at how trauma is going to be approached and helping inform the process that helped launch the new trauma teams that were launched last month. We have instituted monthly meetings for administrative coordinators of all our sites, program supervisors, and youth workers. The ACs have formed committees to share best practices and focus on issues related to operations, programs, staff appreciation, and most importantly, staff care. We think that our BCYF network has an expertise, and we need to bring that expertise to the table and actually draw it out of them as we continue to shape a brand new BCYF that will be built on shared vision, shared strategies, and best practices. We created and implemented a departmental onboarding process for new staff. The process explains our culture, aligns expectations and performances, and provides tools to be successfully assimilated into the new employment position. We utilized and redesigned the BCYF website to increase not only the amount of information we share about our center programming and events outlined, but to also improve the quality and the accessibility of this information. We redesigned and relaunched our BCYF News, BCYF monthly e-newsletter, which now is sent to nearly 7,000 active emails accounts, has tripled the amount of people that we served in our old version. Working with the Foundation for BCYF, the development team increased the revenue raised at our annual fundraising hobnob to $300,000, all of which goes back into our centers for programming. This was a 20% increase from the previous year, as well as an all-time high for the hobnob event. We've identified and secured many new sponsors over the course of the year, which allowed us to support many BCYF programs, such as the Family Gym on Saturdays, BCYF Street Workers, the Super Teens program, Summer Teen Nights, and support the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Advancement, Immigrant Affairs, in creating immigrant information areas in selected BCYF centers. That's sort of the recap of what some of our accomplishments have been. Now I'd like to take you through what might be some of our what will be some of our new initiatives for fiscal year 18. In fiscal year 18, we will implement a citywide peer leadership program to support youth development across the network of community centers. Teen engagement continues to be the focus area for BCYF, and a peer leadership program will keep teens engaged with BCYF after they age out of other programs while providing them with a stipend and job skills. We are hiring 2 floating lifeguards this year that can be relocated as a needed basis, and this will help reduce overtime and ensure sufficiency in staffing at BCYF pools, because this year we're looking at making a stronger commitment to further develop our aquatics program. We will continue the development and implementation of core competencies and skills for staff and volunteers, most likely just to get them back to remember why they love the work that they do and why they do it. And our annual summer block parties are moving away from center-based events to community-based events in neighborhoods where we have identified the need for high-level engagement. Sometimes it's good to get two centers to come together in the middle of their community and do something that sometimes doesn't come to that community to actually engage people much deeper. We will partner with our foundation to identify and engage strategic partnerships and secure at least one new large institutional sponsor and financial supporters. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak with you today. It's an honor to be working for the mayor and working with a city council that is committed to working with us to create spaces where transformative relationships can happen. I look forward to discussing our proposed FY18 budget with you now.
Thank you, Commissioner, and we've been joined by District City Councilor Matt O'Malley. You touched on the peer leadership program, and as I opened, that's where I got my start. It was called the Youth Outreach Program. Chris is very familiar with it many years ago, and it was a peer leadership model. Can you kind of describe the structure of that program?
Sure.
And the ages, too. Back then, I believe it was young teens. And so go ahead, Chris.
Sure, thank you. And first of all, just thank you for allowing me to be here today. And obviously, I'm excited to be here in front of all of you. And before I start, I really want to thank our BCYF staff here for their tremendous work. I'm excited that we're able to re-implement the peer leadership program, because I think that is very important that we continue to bring the voice of young people into the room. If we are going to address some of the issues that the city continues to face, it has to have the voice of young people. So we're looking at youth in ages 13 to 19 years of age who will be trained around different issues, particularly substance abuse, violence prevention, et cetera. And there's no better person to go out and address the issues than young people themselves. They don't listen to me. I'm too old. So they'll certainly listen
They
to...
should, though.
They'll certainly listen to their peers. The hope is that we create teams across our community centers and be able to provide them a small stipend so they can engage other teams. And they'll work closely with our Youth Advisory Committee as well as our Mayor's Youth Council.
Right. I think it's important. How many peer leaders are in a particular community center at this point?
We're anticipating 5 peer leaders per community center. That will be stipend peer leaders.
Yeah, right.
And of course, looking to engage other teams.
And that's the model that I remember. We use the teens for outreach to get them from just hanging out maybe, or engaging in substance abuse, or getting them involved in more positive activities.
Absolutely.
Right? And I would also say that some of the programs when I was growing up, they would bring the programs to the development, and the kids would just stay in the development. And sometimes, as much as I agree that we need programming for the kids in the development, we also have to get them out of the development and integrate them into the broader neighborhood, get them involved in soccer programs where they're, communicating with other teens from other parts of the neighborhood, and break down these kind of territorial barriers sometimes. So I'm glad to hear that's being implemented, and the model is being implemented. Are we doing that in-house, or are we contracting? Because back in the day, it was a contract, if I remember.
We're going to be looking to external funding this time, and we'll have to partner with other folks to make this come to fruition. We've been talking with the Public Health Commission around supporting those efforts, and to your point, I think that as we think about developing young people, they're our most important assets, in the city, and I just think that when we advance the voice of youth, we can go a long way with it.
Right. I just went to an event at the West End House, and it's always great work that we partner with the West End House and the YMCA and BCYF, and my community has pretty much been that way for a long time. And the YMCA, for me in particular, made a huge difference in my life to have male role models that I didn't have at home. And we don't duplicate, we don't compete, we just work well together. And I'm really fortunate that Austin Brighton has kind of always been like that. So I noticed that your budget is going up, you know, a little over 1%. And I also noticed that the personnel line went up, 335,000. Can you kind of go over, you obviously had to make some choices and priorities and how you were able to get, kind of more personnel, it seems, out of a smaller budget maybe going up.
And I can let Mike probably.
And,
take
and
that.
before let me acknowledge that we've been joined by our council president, Michelle Wu. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll let Mike actually take that, but part of it's also those 2 guards and some other things
Okay.
that we've done.
Yeah, so council, it's part of it is the 2 additional floating lifeguard positions, so that's part of it. Also, the other part of it is we had settled a step grievance settlement with the union. We had issues with some part-time employees who missed step increases. So those folks who were budgeted last year at a certain step are actually budgeted at several steps above what they were the prior year because we settled that issue we had. So that also accounts for the increase that you're seeing, in addition to the 2 permanent positions.
Okay. So, and I'm looking at overtime, and I know overtime is hard to, project maybe sometimes. And, I think last year went over about 60,000, which is percentage-wise somewhat significant. Can you speak to how you appropriate the overtime budget?
Yeah, sure. So overtime, we're very strict on overtime. Obviously, we don't want that to get too out of control, but we also have to balance that with safety. And a large amount of that overtime that you're seeing is lifeguard coverage, which is the reason why we, worked with the budget office, and the budget office was kind enough to give us those 2 floating lifeguard positions. We are not gonna, money. Obviously, we want to keep the budget lean and keep things in line, but we're also not going to sacrifice safety. So a lot of that is lifeguard overtime. We want the floating lifeguards to be able to cover. We have things such as military leaves that need to be covered, FMLA leaves, medical leaves, and things that create major problems that have to be filled. So that a lot of the time that's done through overtime. So we're hoping the 2 new floating lifeguards will help alleviate some of that overtime and keep it from getting too far out of control.
And I think that's a great proactive move. And we've had these discussions over the years of how difficult it is to recruit lifeguards too, because it's such a short time frame that we're employing them. So I applaud you guys for that. Let me recognize that we've been joined by District City Councilor Tito Jackson as well. Let me recognize Councilor Anissa Sabi George for her questions.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for being here today. Michael, just while you're engaged, I just want to ask some questions about the budget as it was appropriated last year and what we're projected for actually finishing at. Some of the other departments that we've had before us, the appropriation for fiscal year 17, maybe the final dollar amount didn't change, but there were some shifts within categories. Can you tell us whether this will be actual, what was appropriated last year, if there have been any shifts to that funding?
So we do sometimes do some transfers within the budget, I think is what you're maybe
Yeah, and I
referring.
think that it's anticipated. I'm just curious because this, you're just referencing in the documents we have what was appropriated last year. And I'm just wondering how, close to true those numbers still are for fiscal year 17.
Yep. Okay. So, I mean, I think, our largest line item is permanent employees, and that usually there's some salary savings there, which we usually move around within the budget to cover any deficits on other lines. But I think the permanent employees will be pretty accurate this year. We have made some transfers into contracted services, and the budget office this year worked with us also to put in some additional funds into contracted services for FY18 that were previously held in an account in the capital budget for critical repairs. So they're going to move some additional funding into our contracted services line. It's usually the line that we have to sometimes supplement and along with overtime. But the contracted services is really the funds that we use to repair all the facilities and make repairs and things like that. So that can sometimes get a little more than what we usually budget. So sometimes we'll make a transfer into that line. But again, like I said, permanent employees and things we feel are pretty, pretty on target to what you see.
And then the 2 additional lifeguards, which I'm thrilled about that because water safety is incredibly important. That's for fiscal year 18. Will we see a similar bump in the overtime at the end of fiscal year 17?
So, we're in the process of bringing on 72 seasonal positions to cover the summer, but that they usually don't start until the middle of June. So the overtime, like I said again, we've been trying to move current lifeguards around, which we don't, you kind of just, robbing Peter to pay Paul at that point because you're taking a guard from a point, but we're just trying to do that, trying to offset some of the overtime and cover some of these leaves that we have. But the overtime, you may still see a little bit of additional overtime. Obviously, we're through the winter, so that's good because sometimes this is snow-related overtime and things like that. But we still may see some additional overtime with regards to the lifeguards until we bring the seasonal folks on, because we do have some leaves that we're dealing with and some vacancies. So we're hoping that the 2 floating lifeguards, which will be, they'll have a home. We're working this through right now, too, currently with the union to make sure that they're on board now that we know these 2 positions have been proposed, that they'll have home locations, but will be at our disposal with regards to where there's a need. So we will be able to inform them, you're needed here to cover this leave, or you're needed here. So we're hoping through FY 18 to see a reduction in that overtime, hopefully
Okay.
to reflect those 2 and see if that can help alleviate some of the overtime we've seen this year.
It's not necessarily a problem to have the overtime if we need to use it. It's just to make sure that we're financially planning for it. Because if in fiscal year 15, we were at 200,000 in overtime, and then we're level funded again for going into fiscal year 18 at 103. That's a huge that's 50% less.
Yep.
I just want to make sure that we're able to cover those costs, but then also plan for those costs appropriately.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, the overtime budget, like you had mentioned too, is so hard to predict on where we're going to land. And again, now, especially with the addition of the 2 floating lifeguards, we're hoping that helps alleviate it. So I think level funding it at 103, and usually what we do is we use surpluses from other areas to help compensate for it. But it's definitely a hard line item to try to predict. So yeah, we do run into that sometimes where it's a little bit over than what we expected.
Great, thank you, and thank you for that. Commissioner, you had mentioned your relationship with BPS, which I think is fantastic. We need to have our city's departments interconnected. There are a number of schools that have moved to a 410 end, and there's a number more coming online for this coming school year. And I know that there's been some conversation between the district and our youth centers to make sure that there's programming available for those kids that will be dismissed at 410. My kids attend the Perry in South Boston and often attend the Curly Recreational Center after school. And so just for my kids for sure, and for all of our kids across the city, will we have enough programming available to meet the needs, not just of the 410 ends, but sort of stretch that afternoon's worth of activities for all of our kids across the district? Or Chris, maybe. Thank you.
Yeah, we've been anticipating the change in hours as well, and we've been having some really good conversations with BPS, not just around the change in the shift in hours, but really being intentional about our relationship with BPS. We have, I think, 19 shared spaces, and it's important that we continue to support the great education that's taking place in our school base and our school sites. And so, as we adjusted our hours, the rationale for adjusting our hours is that we'll have adequate staff to provide the quality services that families have come to expect from BCYF. And so, we don't anticipate any issues in terms of providing those access to those quality programs. Of course, partnering with the many agencies that we partner with, many departments that we partner with, but most importantly, partnering with the site councils who have after-school and out-of-school time programs that provide the opportunities for families.
Great. And I know Sean McDonough, who runs the program, or at least is most connected to my kids, has done a fabulous job engaging
awesome.
my boys in some after-school programming. Although I would say that my 6th grader, who's 12, almost 13, is maybe feeling a little bit old for that program. I don't know, for whatever that's worth. I will save the rest of my questions for the next round, give others
Great.
an opportunity. Thank you.
Counselor Tim McCarthy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and welcome to the floor, everybody. I want to start out with something that doesn't have to do with my district, and I don't want to steal my good friend and counselor from District 6, Matt O'Malley, but we need to talk about the Orenburger at length. Matt and I were at an event on Saturday. There probably had to be 500 seniors there. And as Matt and I walked around, all we talked about at table after table is how the seniors are not welcome in the building now from 9 to 1. That's a 40-year-old program. Maybe not welcome is a bit strong, but the program's been changed. And as somebody who is listening to seniors as well as the kids out there, this has become an enormous issue. I know you're aware of the issue, and I know you're aware of the problem. I think that Councilor O'Malley, and I know that Councilor Wu's been involved in it as well, would like to know how we're going to make sure that these seniors have a place to go in the morning. Simply put, they can't be there at the same time where kids are sprinting around. My dad's 88 and he has a walker, and if he's going down the hall and there's 10-year-olds running down the hall, you're looking at a problem. So how are we going to move forward with the Orenburger?
So, Council, I'll take that question. So the commissioner and I have been very responsive to their concerns. Have met several times out at the Orenburger with the folks from the council over this. The mayor is very involved and very concerned, and is been working closely. I've been working closely, and so is the commissioner with Jerome Smith around this to try to address this. We, during the whole hours change, we made a concession to allow a staff person to stay there from the BCUIF side to maintain building access for all programs. She is there during the day to help maintain access. There's currently a council-run preschool program that continues to run with even with the change of hours. The council hires the senior coordinator who runs the senior program. They have been reluctant to hire that person to run the program because they're holding out for us to move our administrative coordinator to the daytime. We've made a shift in hours across the board to keep our administrative coordinators in the buildings after school when programs are at their full functioning. We feel that the access is maintained. We've encouraged the council to hire their senior director to continue the program. They have not agreed to do so. We want that senior program to continue just as we do the preschool program that continues throughout this whole change. They are two council-run programs that we want to see continue. We really have come to the point where we can't understand why they won't move forward with hiring the senior coordinator position to accommodate the seniors. We want the seniors there. They are more than welcome to be there. Again, like I said, it's just we've tried, the commissioner and I, and working with the mayor's office to really try to get that program back up and running again. But we never hired the senior director position. It's always been a council hired position that we want them to fill, and have expressed our eagerness to see them fill that position because we don't want that program to go away. And we were very clear, I think, through the whole change of hours operation conversation that we wanted to maintain access for any programs that were there before. And again, the preschool program continues to operate with our support of an employee there who works there that's a BCYF employee. We maintained a front desk person to maintain security and oversight like we were asked to do. At this point, we've kind of come to a little bit of a roadblock here with the hiring of that position, and we can't. Again, our plan to change hours was to keep all of our coordinators across the board at school sites in the evenings, and we've tried to maintain that with the council out there, and have made multiple attempts to be accountable and explain our position to them. So we're really kind of at a roadblock at this point. But again, the mayor's office and Jerome Smith have been working closely with the folks to try to see if we can come to some sort of understanding on how we can resolve this issue.
Okay. So, you know what, through the chair, if I could allow if you would allow Councilor O'Malley to ask his questions while we're on this subject, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councilor McCarthy. I appreciate that, and gentlemen, I know you've got a very demanding job and a tough job, but Michael, I cannot accept that we're at a roadblock, and we don't need to bore everyone with the details, but I appreciate we work closely together, particularly Councilor Siomo and myself, with the change of the hours. There were two particular sites, one being the Orenburg in West Roxbury, the other being the Jackson Man School in Brighton, that are connected to schools. So there was, and had some multiple programming. You also see a disproportionate number of senior programming, both in Brighton and West Roxbury. So this needs to be worked out, and this needs to be worked out now, because the council is saying, and they have compelling arguments on their side, that they are unable to run senior programming without a site coordinator on site. Otherwise, they will take the liability. So I'm hearing from you folks that that's not true, or that's not in effect. But they have a document that I've seen, I think we've all seen, that suggests otherwise. So we need to figure this out, because 25% of my constituents in West Roxbury are seniors. We have some of the best programming there. Very, very well used. This is a very unique situation where it's attached to a school, but two different entrances. Appreciate your accommodation, making sure that we were able to keep one staff member there to help with security, to help with the door. But the Community Center Council, and these are good people who do a lot of work for no pay and just because they love this program, don't feel comfortable continuing this programming until and unless they get a clear directive from the administration. I'm not necessarily saying it's on you three, but they're getting some mixed messages from the city of Boston in terms of what they can do and what they cannot do, and they'd rather err on the side of caution. So I beg of you, we need to figure this out. Seniors have gone without programming now since October. There are tremendously successful programs that have been put on hold. People are upset. People are concerned. We need to fix this. We need to fix this now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Councilor. And I know we've had the conversations around liability, and we've expressed to the council also that us having an additional city employee there is not going to increase or decrease the council's liability. They're an independent 501c3, and if there's any sort of liability, it's going to fall. They're an independent organization, so having a city employee at the site is not going to limit. We're not going to indemnify a third party in any means. We've been told that by the law department multiple times. So the liability for them is not going to change if an additional city person's there or not. And we've made that clear to them. And again, we just
Mike,
really
you can make it clear, but it's my understanding that they have a document, a MOU from going back to either the 70s or the 80s that says otherwise,
74.
and they still haven't had. They've requested a ruling or a legal interpretation from the Corporation Counsel's office or some attorney. I don't know if it's Corporation Counsel's office, and still haven't received that. So that's where the hesitance is on their end.
Council, we've gone to the law department and we've made it clear to them that document is no longer binding because of its age. It's from 1974. Much of that document is obsolete at this point. We've expressed that to them and consulted with the law department. That document is not binding at this point. There's many outdated things in that document. It was from the origination of the community
So why
schools.
not do a new document?
That's what we're proposing, doing a new MOU so that this way we can spell out what's happening at the current times. When you talk to that document, you're talking about a time where even the workforce of Boston centers or Boston community schools wasn't even in union when it existed. So part of one of the reasons when we said we formed some committees, and in those committees are being chaired by administrative coordinators, the three things that the operations committee came up with is MOUs with schools, MOUs with the councils, because they found out that they're having other struggles with councils that participate in them. And then last thing I think was something around data. And so one of the things that we want to been trying to do is actually pull in the councils to actually begin to have a discussion about how do we begin to have that MOU discussion that clearly speaks to this time versus to try to reference one that was from a time from 1974 where the workforce structure was totally different.
So when are we meeting? When are we going to hammer out that new MOU?
I mean, we've already have done some preliminary drafts. We're going to work with our programs committee that's made up of administrative coordinators, and then start meeting with the site councils to have them sort of begin to inform that process. My goal is hopefully to see, or BCYF's goal is to see the MOU sort of be in place by September. So this way, everything is there spelled out in regards to.
So then my seniors are going to have to wait through the spring and the summer without programming?
Well, normally, if it was summer, we go to summer camp. The building gets quickly dominated again by the summer needs, because then you have the after-school program becomes a sort of a licensed summer camp program, and they're using more of the square footage. So normally it doesn't make it really inclusive, and normally if they're EEC, you can't have adults in ratio that are not part of the staffing structure being in the building because of the safety that they kind of present.
And Will, I know you are committed to this. I know you're a parent of the
I'm a
Orenberger
parent.
School.
My kids go to Orenberger. If
And I
any
appreciate
council has
that. No.
access to me is them. So I'm
Yeah.
there every night to pick up my children. So, I'm amazed too that sometimes I'm in the building while meetings are happening and I haven't been invited. And so it's only fair to say,
Okay.
right?
Well, I think there's probably some cynicism going back and forth, and that happens. So
Yep.
I just want to be clear because I think there's a willingness to fix this. I need to know that this is fixed, either with a new MOU, with some short-term stopgap measure. And so my request of you, Commissioner, is at the conclusion of this hearing, will you please call Kathy Cummings and Dave Gorman from the Community Center at the
We will.
Orenberger? Find a time. I'm happy to attend if that's helpful. I'm happy to not attend if it's helpful. But we need to fix this now. And
Sure.
I appreciate the idea that something could be in place in September, but that's not good enough for me. I need to have a better understanding right now that we can address this and we can give the seniors back their programming. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just to piggyback on that a little bit, because the Jackson Man also had an MOU with BPS. Has that been addressed, or is it looked at as obsolete too? Or do we need one with BPS again, a more updated version?
Yeah, and we're working on that. I started the conversation with BPS around that with Makiba McCreary, who's since moved into a new role, but we're in the process of updating both MOUs. The BPS MOU is not as old as 1974; it's 2009, I believe.
Okay.
So it's a little more recent. And we're kind of using that as a model for the new one, but we're working on updating both MOUs so that we all have a clear understanding as to our roles and expectations.
Yeah, I mean, it's necessary to update these MOUs, especially when they were over 40 years old.
Yeah.
Let me recognize that we've since been joined by District City Councilor Josh Sakem and District City Councilor Andrea Campbell. You still have time, okay?
Okay.
So-
Thanks.
Okay.
So just to end the Orenberger, I think the frustration that you see from Matt and I are echoed with the frustrations from the seniors, but this started in October. So now it's October, now it's May. So now we're looking at September, now we're getting into a whole year of seniors not being able to do something that they've been doing for 40 years. So I agree with Matt, and just like Matt offered, it's his district. If he's spearheading it, I'd love to be a part of it. Or if we're lightning rods and we don't need to be a part of it, that's good too. I've got plenty of meetings to go to. So we just need to make sure it gets wrapped up, and I appreciate that. Can you just talk briefly about the Sunday sites during the summer? How many kids we expect to get? Do we expect to get any kids? Because as you know, I've been working with kids for a long, long time, and I question whether or not these centers are going to be busy on a Sunday. I really do, and I also I have great concern with the family life work balance of a lot of our employees, and I know you care about your employees as well. I'm just concerned that Sundays now are being dedicated for a gym that won't be full because it's a nice hot summer day and nobody wants to go into a community center. They're outside playing. Can you just speak to the Sundays?
Yeah, so Counselor, I mean, we're very promising about, as you know, some of the folks that we service, don't have the luxury of sometimes going away for the weekend. And to be honest with you, I've heard stories of kids that leave a community center on a Friday that's closed for the weekend and asking when they can come back. So, there's the need out there for this. We have 7-day sites that have seen, over the past 5-6 months that we've been doing this, 40% increases in weekend usage since last year. We have the Shelburne Community Center that's fully air conditioned, including the gym. It's a cool place for people to go on a Sunday, Saturday, Monday, whatever day of the week it is. These numbers don't even include the Paris Street Community Center in East Boston that is yet to come back online, that will be soon. That'll be another 7-day site, which will have a fully air conditioned gym and building. So again, these numbers are promising to us, and we feel that, I agree, there's some families and some kids that might get out of town for the weekend. But again, we hear those stories of kids that can't wait to get back. So being able for those kids to have a place to go 7 days a week, and in like I said, some of these facilities where there's been some major investments made where they can get a cool place to get out, play. Several of these sites have rock walls and gyms and facilities that these kids are excited to be in and would be in longer if we were open even longer. So we really are hoping to see these numbers continue throughout the summer. And with regards to the staff, we never want to have to, we know there's a family life. All of us here, have families and children, and we get it. And but we sign up as public service, and we all of us here put in, you know, hours well outside of our hours, and we know our staff have that determination as well, and that conviction to do that also. And again, I know it's not always great, but we appreciate our staff that have taken this on, have done a good job, have really taken this to the next level and done what they're supposed to do. So we realize that balance, and again, you know, we have a lot of constraints to work within as well with regards to their contracts, to making sure that, you know, they're putting in their hours and that they have their 2 consecutive days off and things like that. But and we've made also a lot of concessions to try to make sure that folks that had hardships were moved around when we worked through this with the union. So we get it, but again, being community centers, those kids and our population need us more than Monday through Friday. So we really appreciate our staff that have made this work and have been really good about taking on these hours and being accessible. So we definitely realize the importance of that balance, but we appreciate what folks have given to us.
Okay. Yeah, collecting that data on Sunday is going to be important, as obviously as we go forward with the budget next year. So thanks.
Counselor Wu.
Thank you. Good morning. Could you, and I apologize for being a little late, and maybe some of this will be repetitive from your opening statements. Can you just go over what exactly is the partnership and funding structure with all the different community center sites, and which ones, does everyone have a council? How many are there? And who is making decisions around personnel?
So probably 20 or a little upwards of 20 sites have site councils. The other ones that do not partner with the BCYF Foundation, and they're their fiscal management for any funds that they have, so that they all have some sort of alternate dollars available to them outside of the city budget. With regards to staffing, it's really a shared, obviously we have our city permanent budgeted positions that we hire, but also rely heavily on the site councils to hire they're independent 501c3 organizations. So they do hire some of their own staff to complement what we have for city staff with regards to programming staff. So they may hire summer camp staff, they may hire after school staff, they may hire fitness instructors and things like that. So really it's our core city staff at each site, which is complemented by council staff that they hire to run some of the programs there.
And are the decisions then in coordination, or because the site councils are independent 501c3s, do they get complete control over their hiring decisions? Yep. Who they choose and which types of staff to bring on? Yep.
Yeah, so ultimately, again, they're independent and they're a 501c3. Obviously, we partner very closely together, but they're responsible. They're employees. They're responsible to hire them. They may ask of some of our staff for input around some of those hirings, but ultimately, those employees' employer is the site council, and they're responsible for their hiring and employment.
So, and do those employees then have a completely different pay structure and benefits and everything?
Yes.
And is there any consistency across sites on the site council side, or really it's just up to each organization?
Yep. Each organization does its structure, looks for its own liability insurance, looks for how they're going to administer payroll. It's different structures.
And does BCYF, on the city side, are you tracking, or do you have a sense of what all the site councils are doing then in terms of working conditions, number of people, roles?
So what we do when we give them, so I do know that when we provide them, obviously through the BCYF Foundation with any grants or things, they're required to submit certain financial documentation to us with regard to their 990s and things like that. So that's sometimes how we become aware of a lot of the information going on. But again, they are ultimately responsible for their own hiring and determining what their needs are with regard to their staffing levels. So obviously we're aware, we share space with them, they work closely with us, we're aware of that, but ultimately it's up to their boards to determine what their budget is, when additional positions are necessary, and what their hiring and employee structure looks like. Okay.
But then the decisions around hours are all done centrally from the city side because the city owns the properties. Is that the justification?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And Council, I think, as we were talking about the MOU a few minutes ago, what we're looking to do in terms of the MOU is really spell out a lot of those policies and procedures a lot more clearly so that there's some consistency across all of our sites and our site councils. Our site councils work closely with our administrative coordinators, so they clearly don't have, sort of just do your own thing over at the sites. They have to work closely with the administrative coordinators. But the MOU, I think, once we have implemented it, will enable us to be very consistent across all of our site councils.
No, I mean, it seems like a model that works, particularly with our Main Streets program. We see a lot of great kind of partnership, but also independence from, in terms of funding and decision making. I would just echo my colleagues in saying that it would be, I think it's important to have consistency and for BCYF to at least know sort of what is happening on the council side in each site, but wouldn't want that, the push to have something citywide done slow down a particular problem at a particular, like at the Orenburger, for example. Okay, so that is very helpful. On the hours in general, I know starting a few last year and maybe the year before also, the sites had been open for extended hours on the weekends during the summer. Do you have any data on usage and what adjustments are going to be made in terms of summer, nighttime spaces, particularly for teens?
There is some data just in terms of where we've seen some increases on the weekends, but specifically on Saturdays and Sundays. It's not a lot of data. We'll be happy to share that with you. But I think as we look at the summer, clearly it'll be predicated on some of the things that should arise. Our staff are always prepared to get our spaces open as needed. Sometimes crises do arise. Specifically, unfortunately, we have violence that takes place in the city, and when we see those things happening, we get our street workers and get our facilities open. But we'll also be doing some girls' nights out, which will enable us to keep some spaces open at night a little bit later. We just want to make sure that families have safe spaces to go, as it gets hot out.
Yeah, and comparing it to last summer we didn't have the extended 5 sites that were working on Sundays. This will be the first summer that we actually will institute that and put that into place. So just like Councilor McCarthy mentioned, we are going to look at the weekend usage, especially during the summers, a little bit much clearer. But we also see opportunities too. There's a very millennial, young professional group out there that's looking for use of space. Speaking with being part of the HSS cabinet and speaking with Veteran Affairs, there's opportunities to look at how maybe some of our Sundays can become service league for servicemen and women who sometimes return back and just need another kind of social kind of connection to get them through some things. And then opportunities maybe for some sober leagues too for individuals that are coming back and recovering, just to have a safe space to do some stuff too as well.
Okay, great. And then finally, could you just talk a little bit about childcare and how many slots or sites are involved with providing some sort of early education and childcare?
Yeah, so Council, obviously the one child care program that we run is here at City Hall, and there is currently the capacity is 54, which is made up of 17 infant slots, 12 toddler slots, and 25 preschool, and we have currently 6 vacancies, one in the infant 1 classroom, 1 in the infant 2 classroom, and 4 in the preschool classroom. We've been working very hard to try to fill the slots as quickly as possible. We've made some changes to the waitlist policy. We've created and formulated a formal waitlist policy. We've seen that the waitlist is more accurate now. We've been able to upkeep that and again try to fill those slots as quickly as we can because most of the need is in the infant slots. I think with the expansion of K0 slots and kindergarten slots, the preschool slots aren't as attractive as they used to be. So we're actually looking at 2 and even just discussing possibly shifting the slots a little bit to accommodate the infant where we see the need, maybe take away a little bit from the preschool slots where we don't see as much of a need, but we're running pretty well and filling slots as quickly as we can. And City Hall, we're trying to also maintain the deficit there as well to try to make sure that the program has what they need to operate They're fully staffed now. So it's a great program, a program we're proud of. And again, just, making some changes over the past couple of years to try to improve the service delivery and folks being able to find out where they are on the wait list and things like that, and making sure that there's clear policies and up on the website and things like that to help folks.
Well, I can definitely vouch for that program. I know there's going to be a separate revolving fund conversation on it too. But for example, in some of the Orenberger communications that they've mentioned, the preschool program there, and so how many non-city hall sites have some version of a preschool or early ed?
Right?
So there's, if I can recall, there's 3, and we support all 3, but they're not our program. So Orenberger has their own program, Leahy Holleran has their own program, and the Rosendale Community Center has their own program. And at each site, there's one city employee who we support at 50%, and the council reimburses us for 50% of their salary. But all 3 of those are council-run programs. The city BCYF only runs the single one at this point here at City Hall Childcare.
Okay. In some of the Orenberger, and I'm sorry to keep dwelling, but the materials are just in front of us, and it's really helpful to have this detail. They mentioned that the preschool teacher will be the 50% city side is actually going to be cut as well in years to come.
No,
Okay.
that's not true. They were supposed to be at 100% reimbursement at this point, but the city and the mayor want to continue to support those programs, so we've continued at the 50-50 reimbursement for the past, and I think it's been since I've been here 6 or 7 years. So after the initial couple of years, it was supposed to be 100% reimbursement, but we realized the importance of those programs and continue to support that employee at 50% and also covering their fringe benefits as well. The council just reimburses us 25% of the actual salary.
Okay, and that will go for the next couple of years.
Yep,
All right,
yep.
great.
I think the
you.
current MOU's got another year left on it, maybe.
Thank you very much.
Counselor Jackson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good morning. I guess I will follow on with the line of questioning. I actually spoke to the folks at the Orenberger also, and I want to wish Kathy. I hope she's on the mend. I know she broke her leg. I'm baffled, and we've had this conversation, and I concur with Counselor O'Malley. This needs to get fixed, and it needs to get fixed immediately. The hours change was burdensome to the centers, and some of the hours changes, it sounds like, and I dealt with this, and we had many conversations where it's BCYF. We should not be putting youth and elders against one another. We should actually be moving towards an and versus a or. And I think, and from what I heard, and I heard my counterpart from Jamaica Plain be very, very definitive in his statement that I heard you say we've been responsive, but responsive is not always responsible, right? And just because we say we're listening to someone, if they don't actually get what they need, and I'll be honest with you, my mom has used services at these facilities. My mom doesn't like to change her schedule ever. She works on the schedule that she works on, and so for you guys to make these changes and to centralize the hours, and I think I personally think that there are very different things that happen in different parts of the city, and I live in Grove Hall. And one of the things that's happened there is that we, yes, have a great new senior offering there, but there's no youth offering in that area, in an area where there was someone got killed in front of the Burke School last year. And we also know that many of the young people from Grove Hall can't go down the street to the Holland, and they can't go to other neighborhoods for the other aspects of what BCYF does. So I just think we have to be really thoughtful relative to how we move forward. So I concur with the previous speakers. The Orenberger needs to get fixed. And by the way, they've been there for 40 years, and I don't know anyone who's been, well, maybe Chris, but I don't know. Okay, great. So I don't know anyone over there who's been there that long. So I actually trust that they know what they're doing. And if we're talking about a partnership where they're actually hiring staff, then that actually has to be a partnership in having the conversation about these hours. It can't be from an on high. And that happened to my district before with Madison when they did a rec hub. It came from on high, didn't work, and there was this structural change that was disruptive. So I guess I want to understand these changes or this unified offering relative to hours. Are we not trusting of the individuals who work on the site level to set the hours that actually are relevant to those neighborhoods and communities to deal with the specific, very granular issues that occur in those neighborhoods and communities?
So Counselor, first of all, I think, the hours change is we have a constituency that we have to serve, and each center has their own neighborhood needs and wants. But obviously, we also have a citywide needs and wants that we need to provide our constituents with some sort of consistency. And again, I think that the Arnberger situation, and again, the mayor has taken this issue very seriously, and I know is deeply involved in trying to help resolve this issue, is that we have a lot of faith in our staff. We have a lot of faith in the site council out there. We have a lot of respect for them. They've run some great programs, but we just don't see eye to eye on the fact that we need them to hire their senior coordinator position to get the senior program up and running again. That position was open well before the hours change. It was open prior to the hours change. That it has not been filled. It's been before October since that position's been filled. So we're really eager to work with them to get that position hired, so the seniors can have a place to go. And again, I think we have a lot of faith in our staff. I think that we just need to be able to prioritize around when is the best time for our staff to be in the building to help. And we're seeing numbers that are supporting what we did in increasing usage for the constituents. So I guess you're correct. It was a little bit of a rough process going through that, but we've worked through it. We've got a lot of buy-in, I think, from our staff who have become accepting of this. We've seen constituents that have responded in a way that they're coming out in greater numbers to use the facilities in these hours that
Do you disaggregate that data?
What's that? I'm sorry.
Do you disaggregate that data? So when you're saying those constituents, you're using an aggregate term in terms of the total. Do you have age-based banding of that data? Because this is the thing. And this is what we never should be should we be pitting folks against one another. So maybe that data that could mean that there's more young people who are coming and no elders who are coming, right? And so the programming that existed there, yoga and computers and the things that were happening in the morning, how much money are we talking about here? How much would that position cost BCYF to fill? The job that we're actually talking about.
So the job that we're talking about is the computer instructor, and that was always a council position. I don't know what her salary was. The position that they want to work there during the day is a $100,000 a year position for the city.
Okay.
So that's a big position, and again, we want that position at night when there's the most activities, and all of our other city staff are working at night. So we have, the position that we're debating about is a senior and always has been a council hired position that we want and have enticed them and encouraged them to hire so that we can get the seniors back in that building.
So I guess I would just close. I concur with my friend Councilor O'Malley, who represents that district. This is something that needs to get fixed.
Mhm.
And again, just saying that we hear you doesn't get it fixed. I personally find it unacceptable that seniors have not had access that they had prior since October. And our first job is to do no harm.
Mm-hmm.
So these changes, it doesn't mean anything. And BPS sat there yesterday, and they talked about these additional dollars when they were cutting the baseline of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're not going to actually add and we're going to shift it, then that becomes a huge issue. How many? I would also note, what are the youth services being provided in the Grove Hall area to young people in Grove Hall?
Well, in Grove Hall, when we were going to make the switch, we added an additional youth worker at the Holland School who has been coming over. Another thing that we did is that we look at our partnership model. Project Right has actually been having access to the space and running something.
But they don't have the funds, and you know that.
And we just had a conversation with them yesterday about how do we continue to deepen more of the partnerships, where can we be creative around the fundraising, and look at what else we can actually offer when we get there. And it was a great talk yesterday with George Martinez and Mike Kozo about what do we do to move forward. On top of it, the Holland Site Council is also interested in maybe coming up to the Holland and then hiring a staff person to look at covering some
But-
hours in there too as well.
We know you guys run you run the street worker program.
Yep.
And we know that there are individuals who can't walk down the street 4 or 5 blocks. They can't.
But what I'm telling you, Counselor, the Site Council at the Holland is looking at doing program at the
I
program.
understand.
Not bringing them over.
No,
doing the
I understand,
programming
but
out of the
we're
space.
saying looking at doing the programming. So that currently the programming does not exist
Mhm.
for one of the areas that has some of the most violent incidents in the city of Boston, and we don't have youth programming in Grove Hall right now today.
Mhm.
And we have not had it since when?
Since summer, right? Started the
Since the summer. So if we're gonna think about a cohesive way of doing things, and I love that seniors are there. I love it.
Mhm.
Right? But no one is gonna be safe if the young people who are at risk in Grove Hall, if folks aren't interfacing with them, if they don't have a place to go, if they can't run around and play basketball, if they don't have structured programming. Right? And by the way, that's actually not gonna be safe for seniors either.
Mhm.
Right? We know it's an area. There's a young person who died in front of that school last year. And then programming for young people was shut down a couple of months after. So I want to hear a solution to that. And with that said, how many street workers do we have now? And how many will we have in this budget?
We have 32 street workers that are in the budget, 28 street workers, 4 senior street workers, and we have an additional 15 from Violence Interrupters, a partnership with the Boston Foundation.
And the funding was slated to end at the end of this year. Is it being extended?
Yeah, we still have some surplus money from that Boston Foundation, so we anticipate that funding to take us through FY18.
So no one will lose their job,
No?
and you'll have the exact same number of positions.
Yes.
Will you begin to track and use the actual computer model that came out with StreetSafe? Because and we've had this conversation a bunch of times, the issue that we don't, I don't know if you have it now, are we tracking the caseload of individuals, and are we understanding the touches that they have?
Yeah, I don't know what system StreetSafe had, but we have a system that we have efforts to outcomes, and that system enables us to better track the progress of 745 individuals. We certainly know that it's new, so I think it's probably eight months in. The staff have done a really good job at learning the system, and they're doing a really good job with tracking the system. And we're gonna that data has really been helpful for us.
Yeah, I'm happy that there's data, because we didn't have it before, and that was unacceptable in that space.
Counselor, can I move on, please? Counselor Zachem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be brief. I know many of our colleagues have extensive questions for the next round. I want to start off, though, by be remiss if I didn't say that John Jackson, who runs the Tobin over in District 8, very close to the border with Councilor Jackson, does an outstanding job. I think if there's anyone who's at more community meetings in the Mission Hill community than myself, it's probably John, and I just want to pass that along. I think it's a huge asset to the neighborhood. And talking about the Tobin, I'm thrilled to see that we have the backyard project in construction. This is something my predecessor, Mike Ross, was working on. It was the first thing he said to me, need to make sure this gets built, so I'm glad it's happening now, and I appreciate that. And I'm talking about the Tobin. It's obviously a huge resource for the neighborhood and gets a lot of use. There's something I want to float, and I'm not advocating one way or another, but I would appreciate your opinions, and I maybe down the road might be better to work with this through John, but I want to put it on your radar screen that the Parker Hill branch of the public library is closing July 1st for renovations for a year. And we were able to delay that to allow for the end of the school year. There's a lot of after-school programming there, et cetera, kids doing homework. But they are going to be looking for some limited space in the year. The Dudley Library, it's my understanding, which was offered as somewhat of an alternative, is undergoing renovation in November. So there's going to be a need in that area. And again, I don't know what programming space there is. I know it's, like I said, it's very well used, but would you be open, if it works with the programming, to work with the BPL and the community to find whether it's even for kids' story time, that sort of thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think John, based on availability, would be more than happy to do that. And we've just did this in JP at Curtis Hall, where we absorbed a lot of the programming during the renovation. So we'd be more than happy to entertain any possible space that we would have free. And I'm sure John would be more than willing to help accommodate that. And we've had the same in return from other city departments when we've had renovations who have been kind enough to house us. So we can absolutely.
No, because that would be huge. I mean, I think we have two great community resources, literally, just a few blocks from each other. And obviously the renovations at the library are needed and welcome, but there's a huge percent of the population, seniors, young adults, kids who really use the library a lot. So finding that alternative space would be great. So yeah, I certainly would not want to go top down and tell John we have to do this, but the only that you're open to it if it works for him and his programming. Appreciate it. That's really all I have right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And we've been joined by District 3 City Councilor Frank Baker, Councilor Andrea Campbell.
Thank you, Councilor Siomo, and thank you, Commissioner and Chris and Michael, for being here, and thank you for your testimony. I apologize for missing your presentation, but I will see it online. A couple of quick questions. What's the total number of sites that we have, community centers?
So we have 36 facilities. It could include 2 seasonal outdoor pools, but overall 36 facilities.
And going back to a couple of questions that Councilor Jackson asked, specifically the street worker program, how many current street workers do we have?
There are 28 street workers and 4 senior street workers on the city's operating budget, and it's supplemented with 15 staff from a partnership with the Boston Foundation.
Those 15 staff are covered by the Boston Foundation?
Yes.
So the 28, the 4 senior street workers are in addition to the 28 street workers
Yes.
covered by us?
Yes, the senior street workers supervise the 28 street workers.
And I know there was a lot of discussion on whether or not they'd have funding and what that would look like. So it looks like the funding will continue from the Boston Foundation through FY18.
Yes.
In the budget now, though, there's a cut for the street worker program that's over like $400,000. Unless we have that wrong on our end.
Yeah, we don't foresee any reductions in the street workers. We're going to maintain the same number of positions that we've had in the past.
So I'm just going to quickly direct this to Councilor Siomo. So
you're looking at the Street Safe program?
yes. So the Street Safe program.
It's 680,000 less.
Right. Less than the total appropriation we had in FY17.
Page 9 of the budget book. Yeah, but that would be this is external funds. Is this the
that's-
external fund?
I think
Right, so-
that speaks to how the money was expended. So we received a total of, it was 3.1 over 3 years, and maybe that's how it was dispersed. I'm not sure. Is that, Mike?
Yeah, I'm not.
I don't know why we received a total of 3.1 million over 3 years
From the foundation.
from the foundation. Yes.
Can we explain this sort of line item or what this means? And if you guys need time to go back to it, I can go to another question and then come back.
Seeing this?
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah, I don't see the numbers as they add up, and maybe I'm missing something, but it looks the total. I think so it's not, when we received the funding wasn't based on fiscal year, it was annually. So from January to December. So maybe that's what it is. I think when you total up the numbers, it looks like 3.1. So you got 314, 1.1. You got 1 and 680. I think it totals 3.1.
Yeah, and I think it's council. I think it's around how the funding's dispersed.
Oh, it was dispersed, yeah.
But we can get you additional information on that too.
That would be great. The whole point of that questioning was just to make sure that that program isn't losing anything. And if it was losing something, of course, what the implications of that are, particularly, as we continue to have hearings around violence, first responders. Everyone knows how valuable the street worker program is, particularly when it comes to trauma response, warm referrals, and those things. So we want to make sure that they have adequate funding, of course, to maintain their staffing levels. So I saw that and didn't know if that was going to affect the program this year, but it sounds like it isn't. But if there's more details, feel free to email it through the chair.
Thanks.
2 more questions. One has to do with the Grove Hall Community Center. So technically in my district, but Councilor Jackson and I obviously share Grove Hall in that community. And Project Right, of course, I forwarded an email, and when we were exchanging emails, Commissioner, and Mike and Jorge did say that they met with you guys. I just have sort of follow-up questions on that, which is, I understand there's a youth worker that comes from the Holland that will be coming to the Grove Hall Community Center to provide youth programming now that it's been transformed to serve seniors. What does that programming look like? Because currently there is some programming that's happening at the Burke through Project Right for like 30 or 60 teenagers that consistently show up. So what will that program look like if it's moved into the Grove Hall Center? Will this coordinator from Holland pick up and do the same programming, or what will they be doing outside of a person coming to that center?
Well, yesterday when we met with Jorge and Michael Kozo in regards to it, the preliminary discussion was to kind of explore what can we actually do there. Part of it was also to explore what is it they want to continue to do in the space, so that this way they didn't feel like they were obligated to program something out 5 days a week or whatever the time they really wanted to kind of do this kind of work. I know that when we were talking, the Holland Community Center's site council, had expressed interest of trying to look at programming because at their site they bust at the seams in regards to what they're doing. And we haven't had a deep dive discussion yet with the Holland Site Council in regards to what that might look like. But part of what we want to do is hopefully pull together a couple of community players there that actually do work with youth in that area and kind of explore what could be the evening usage of sort of that one space. We talked a little bit about the challenges that we have in regards to getting access to the basketball court in the rec area because of the fact that sometimes the school has a president over that space. And when you have 2 schools operating.
This is at the Grove Hall Community Center?
Hall, yeah.
But if we're specifically talking about the summer,
Yeah.
that space would be available.
Yeah, that space will be available.
Right.
And so we're
And I think that's the focus, the summer, obviously, given
and that's the
spikes in
focus.
crime.
And hopefully we're going to get back together and hopefully continue to have meetings to kind of tighten up what actually we can do within that space. Anyway, and there's also the opportunities that we may look at our street workers maybe adopting a night there too as well, and look at what we may be able to create with them too as well.
Is the city going to offer any direct funding?
I wouldn't say that the city would, but I think that we could looking at some private dollars and seeing what else we can do in that space.
Do you think, given the time frame, obviously the summer's around the corner, that we're going to have an opportunity to do adequate fundraising to support Project Right, or frankly anyone who does effective programming for youth who wants to come into that space over the summer, to be able to get funding for that to happen?
Well, that's the reason we're going to have a conversation with the Holland Site Council, who also sits in a pool of money too as well. Knowing that they understand that their kids are transient. They have to go through Grove Hall, to catch buses. They go through Grove Hall. They go to Grove Hall to shop with their parents. And so, there might be the opportunity that we create some bridge opportunities there.
Well, I will say, and just echoing Councilor Jackson, I think it's extremely important, and as Mike Kozu from Project Right just walks in, I think it's extremely important that we come up with some level of funding. We're talking about the summer coming across the entire city of Boston. Everyone from BPD, the fire department, EMS, counselors, clergy are thinking about what they can do to prevent any incidents of violence, of course, to keep our violent and crime rates low. And that means, of course, providing activities for youth. So the concern, particularly for Grove Hall, which we know is an area that absolutely needs it, this might require us to pull funding from somewhere within our own city budget to support those efforts. if we can't find private funding or partners to do this programming for free. Because I think when we start, I mean, we're already in May. If we start in June, for example, kids get out of school and there's nothing set up, I think it's a recipe for disaster. So, consider me a partner in work. If there's anything I can do, if it's calling someone, if it's advocating with you guys to particular organizations that we think are willing to support those youth, to provide programming for free for our young people, I'm all in. I'm sure I can speak for my colleagues as well. But I do think we need some sort of solution sooner than later. So let me know how I can be helpful as well. And then my last question has to do with other uses for the community centers. Obviously, some community centers have more traction and more attendance by residents than others. I, for example, run a district office in District 4, a place where anyone can come in to try to handle city business without having to come way down here. I'm the only counselor with one currently, and frankly, the city doesn't cover that. I have to pay for that. But in thinking long term, it'd be really great to see community centers serve as sort of district office spaces where, in addition to City Hall on the go, which sometimes people show up for City Hall on the go and the truck isn't there, consistently having some community centers across the city open 3 days a week. From 9 to 4, where folks can come into those spaces and they know, for example, on Wednesday, someone from ISD might be there or someone from the mayor's ONS office. Counselors, their district counselors can find a space to show up. I'd love to have conversations about how we can turn some of our community centers into district office spaces for folks to be able to handle some of their business, particularly our seniors, so they don't have to come way downtown. I mean, I live in Mattapan. If you take the T, it's a trek down here and then to go back. And we have these spaces, which are incredible spaces to be used for so many different purposes. I'd love to have a conversation about how we use them possibly for district office spaces.
Yeah, and Councilor, I mean, we have worked very closely with City Hall to go in the Tobin Community Center. We actually provided them with a permanent space. It's called a neighbor hub. Where they have permanent space there and certain operating hours. We're working with them now to add an additional location to do that. We have the same vision that you have around making the community centers kind of an extension of city services and kind of a neighborhood, again, hub where people can come and go. I know multiple community centers offer seniors the ability to pay their water bills. They get taxi vouchers and coupons. Elder services sometimes comes out and sends representatives out. So it's something we're definitely working on, and we've talked with ONS about being able to offer their office hours there, their neighborhood reps. So we're getting there and we're working towards that, but we definitely share the same vision as you around bringing city services out to the community centers. We partnered with City Hall to go during the winter, so people didn't have to stand outside of the truck. We brought them inside. They offered their services indoors at our community centers. We partner closely with animal control to offer vaccinations and things at the community centers, again, to get people to not have to make the trek to these places.
I've seen them.
Yeah,
but I will say, it'd be great to see it in a formalized, consistent way where everyone knows, for example, in Dorchester at a particular community center on a particular day that Public Works or ISC, some of our departments, for example, that interact or interface with our residents the most, will be in those spaces consistently. And their counselors, at-large counselors could come, anybody, or street workers, whoever it is, in a consistent way. So it's great to see you guys move in that direction. And I do know of some of these things, so that's great. I'll end on this. It's about priorities, right? We have to assign and attach the monies that we spend to those priorities. So I understand the limitations of, BCYF's budget when it comes to, I know, Commissioner, you would probably love to go in your pocket and go, here, Grove Hall, let's do this. But I think it's about moving things around or taking, frankly, $500,000 from one department and saying, you know what, we're going to give this to this department to do this specific need, because in the immediate, this is something that has to happen. So I'm all for shifting things around and working with you. So thank you for all the work that you guys do, and thank you for being here today. Thank you, Councilor Ciamo.
Are we aware if Boston Public Health Commission still funds street workers?
They have, they never had street workers. They had some outreach workers who were kind of in the mode of the street workers, and they do.
They do? Do you know how many?
I don't. I couldn't answer
But
that.
they have a different function than a street worker? Do they operate like street workers? 'Cause that was my understanding, and I never kind of understood why we wouldn't just try to shift that funding to one program. But if they do something separate and apart and have a different mission, then I could
Yeah,
understand.
they had a different function. We used to work closely with them. Actually, we still do.
Right, okay. Council Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Michael, William, Chris. How are
How
you
you doing?
today?
Good. Thank you.
So, Chris, what we just were talking about the outreach workers. So, are we cross training our street workers now?
Yes.
And you know, cross training meaning so they can deal with people with addiction.
Yeah, we've been working closely with the Office of Recovery, and you know, they've been fantastic in terms of providing our staff with some additional tools in their toolbox to help address some of the issues, you know, as it pertains to substance abuse, specifically along the Mass Ave corridor and in and around the Commons for you know, adults as well as youth. In fact, we sit on the Substance Abuse Advisory Committee, which has really been focused around youth substance abuse, which
Who leads that, Chris?
Jen Tracy
Okay, yeah.
over at the Office of Recovery. And, you know, the work has been going on, and the staff have been trained.
So when one of your people, one of your workers comes across someone that might be ready for help, they're able to connect into 311 or the paths or whatever is down, whatever's available to them.
Yeah. In fact, outreach workers and our outreach workers have been doing some work on the ground together.
Yeah, because it all intersects and intertwines someplace.
Yeah.
Thank you. Michael, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Council, how are you?
Good. So we have 36 facilities. How many of those are shared facilities?
I'm pretty sure we have close to 20. I think it's around 18 or 19 are in schools.
Oh, so it's just 16 buildings are standalone, because it sounded like my good colleague was talking about maybe some new facilities. Do we talk about that at all? I know there's one in the North End that's under a study. Can you run me through? I think I have a need in Dorchester. We share a facility, and I think we should be thinking like Andrea as we're moving into the future. How are we consolidating and building buildings that you know are generational, so our seniors and our tots can go in there in the morning, and then it's teens or whoever in the mid-afternoon, and then maybe, you know, older people till late at night. What's our capital plan? Maybe what I'm asking.
Yeah. So our capital plan, you know, we're really excited. The mayor's making some major investments in BCYF, and we're really excited about the capital projects. And I agree with you. In Dorchester, we have 5 sites, but all of them are located within schools.
Yeah.
So obviously we feel most comfortable when we have standalone facilities like the Tobins and sites like that, where we have free reign of the building, and we can program it from morning till night. Again, like you said, taking into account young mothers with children or play groups or elderly, and then also well into the evenings, and really makes us accessible. So that's always our preference, but obviously there's some neighborhoods that don't offer a standalone building, and we work closely with BPS to make sure that we still have a presence in these neighborhoods where we don't have a standalone building. But that's definitely our priority. And with regards to the North End, this study, we selected a designer recently to embark on this study. That was actually in FY17 to help us try to determine either a building plan for the current facility or an alternate site location for a new North End Community Center. So that's just getting underway.
They're in the Nazaro where the basketball court is.
Yep.
There in the
Yep, right on North Bennett Street. So what we've seen there is that they have I personally really like that facility. I think it's beautiful. But they're kind of bursting at the seams, so to speak, with regards to some of their youth
So would
programming.
that look like an additional building on like Nazaro and an additional building? Where would you go down the North End? Like,
So I guess that's the intention of this whole study, is to see if there are other alternate site locations, or is it best to stay where we are, and possible building plans that could help us with a capital project there. But we really do have a great capital project right now. We got Paris Street in East Boston wrapping up a $12 million project that brought a over 100-year-old building into the into the 21st century, and turned what was originally slated as a bathhouse into a full-fledged community center with teen space and that we never had before, and fully air-conditioned building and additional programming space and a rock wall and just really a great renovation. We're set to get under construction in September in the fall on Vine Street Community Center, which we're really excited about. We're getting ready.
And what are those improvements at Vine?
So the Vine Street will be mechanical, HVAC, interior improvements, some gym work, a batting cage. We've been doing batting cages around some of our facilities through a grant with the Major League Baseball Players Association, the Red Sox Foundation, and Major League Baseball. So that's exciting. People are excited about those. But Vine Street's going to get a real good, nice makeover with regards to, like I said again, mechanicals, interior spaces, a fitness center, which they don't have right now. We're going to add in there.
Is there ever any talk, Michael, of like turf facilities at all, like covered turf facilities at all for like the center of the future where you have a larger space where you could, like again, you could do tracks on them where the seniors could walk and whoever wants to walk in the morning when we have 10 feet of snow on the ground. Like as we're going into the future, like are we looking at maybe any kind of different styles of centers?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously that's definitely, in Parks and Rec obviously does a lot with turf facilities and athletic facilities, but obviously more outdoor, we're more indoor. So I guess what you're getting at would be kind of a hybrid. And
an indoor-outdoor facility, if you've toured any of them, Michael, they're really, really nice.
Well, and we've been very involved, and so is the mayor with the Jackson Square project with Urban Edge, who've been a great partner, and they're actually developing a $20 million plus indoor rink and turf facility in Jackson Square. So it's been very exciting to watch their progress.
Is Jackson Square in Brighton?
No, Jackson Square and Jamaica Plain, Roxbury line. But that's been a very exciting project to be part of. The mayor has been working hard with them also to provide, like I said, a really state of the art, like really different type of facility where it's ice and indoor turf. But our facilities just aren't big enough right now.
And who operates that facility?
They're actually
Who will operate?
They're
that
actually
facility?
looking for someone to operate that facility because they have
And
the dollars to
who's
build
building it again? Will you bring me back to
Urban Edge. They're CDC in Roxbury, Jamaica Plain, that have raised money and in combination with state
the
funding.
facility with a hockey rink and an
Hockey
indoor,
rink on one floor, indoor turf on another, with some
levels.
yeah, 2 levels.
Wow.
It's quite impressive, and again, it's been great to see that. But it's exactly kind of what you're speaking to. But our facilities just aren't big enough to accommodate an indoor. I can't think of any that we have that may be big enough to do that.
No, but maybe that's part of future thinking and future development. Because I mean, if we're in the winter and we could play soccer and lacrosse and flag football and everything in the winter, I think
Yeah, and a lot of the times our gyms become that kind of multi-purpose space.
Yeah.
But again,
Yeah.
you're right. As we move forward, it would be interesting to explore some of those options as well. But yeah, usually the gyms become the catch-all for. You'll see kids playing soccer or lacrosse or indoor. Like I said, now with batting cages, we get baseball coming indoors with us. So we're definitely with you on that and getting kids access to these facilities. 365. So we'd be definitely as those opportunities may arise.
And am I okay, Mr. Chair? One more question?
Sure.
So another sort of thing that as we're looking into the future, is there any, like how much would we partner with, say, the city, you guys built a building and then like kind of finding a partner to run it so it could be open longer, like that business model? That makes sense. Like, so city builds something and it either is run by Boys Club, supplemented by us, or run by, is there any talk of that?
So I mean, we do have several facilities currently that we no longer utilize that are utilized by partner organizations. Smart from the Start operates a facility, the Johnson Center in Mission Hill, and the Gavin Foundation operates the Walsh Center in South Boston. The Boys and Girls Club, we have that model over at Orchard Gardens. They operate that facility. We also have facilities that we're currently in that we partner with.
We own and operate the facilities there, or is it just a lease with the Boys Club?
So it's a lease. So we own the building and they handle the day-to-day operation. It's kind of like a landlord-tenant type of relationship where we're still responsible for a lot of the building upkeep and things, but they provide the day-to-day programming.
Yeah. So they pay utilities, and so we're responsible for just upkeep. Was that a newer building when they went in there, or was it an old building?
I think Chris.
Yeah, it wasn't a new building. That building's been up for quite some time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Counselor Sabi George.
Thank you. I want to shift gears to talk a little bit, I think you touched on it, I think Chris in particular, about outreaching to some of our more vulnerable populations. Can you talk a little bit about your work outreaching to some of our homeless youth?
Sure. We spent quite a bit of time last year, I think, working closely with the Boston Public Health Commission when some issues, particularly, specifically in the downtown area, there was a significant increase of homeless youth that we noticed in the Commons, and so. We assigned a couple of staff members to work in that area. And then, of course, we realized that there was actually a whole lot of homelessness that was taking place in some of the communities that we served. Many youth who were not being identified as homeless because they were, they had a place to lay their head, but they're actually couch surfing. And so we've spent some significant time doing some outreach there and working closely with many of the homeless shelters, youth homeless shelters in the city. And we still do. As we're doing the work, mentioned the work that's taking place down in Mass Ave, we've also identified quite a few youth who are actually homeless in and around Mass Ave. And I think one of the things, the quick answer is if a kid's 18 or 19, you say, oh, well, send them to an adult shelter. And in my opinion, my humble opinion, that's not the best place for them. And so
That's in my opinion as well, too.
Yeah.
And I think most professionals that work with homeless individuals, 18 and 19-year-olds, the appropriate place is not in our quote-unquote adult shelters.
Yeah. And so we've really been working closely with the Bridge Over Troubled Waters as well as some of the other shelters, organizations to support those youth.
And then are we, and we maybe aren't, and I'd like to encourage it, working with some of our family shelters that are in our neighborhoods and making sure that the youth that are a part of those families are connected to our programming through your work.
Absolutely, Counselor. One thing that we know is that when constituents walk through our doors, they don't come and tell us who they are. Of course, as you build relationships, you start to get to know them and understand some of the things that they're dealing with. And so we're constantly, training our staff and doing professional development so that they understand how important it is for us to be inclusive. And, many kids that we see are going to school every day. They're coming into our community center spaces, and we find out that, in fact, they have no homes to go to at night. And so we're very cognitive of that, and we make sure that our staff understand that and are treating them no differently than anyone else who comes through our doors.
I think we have an opportunity too with some of the family shelters like the Sojourner in Roxbury or St. Mary's in Dorchester, Crossroads, I know Michael's familiar with in East Boston, Brookview and Mattapan, that we're proactively reaching out to those
Yes.
family shelters where youth of all ages are and bringing them into our youth centers. There is also a large early ed, pre-K, K1, K0 population of youth that attend BPS that we're also engaging them. And we have some pre-K seats, I think, through our partnerships with the site councils. Do we have any data on how many BPS kindergarten seats are run out of our youth centers or our sites? I don't know if Michael, if maybe through our site councils, you have some numbers of kindergarten seats as opposed to sort of the daycare programs.
Yeah, so we could definitely get you that information, Council. All we had was the information that we have 54 slots at City Hall childcare.
Yep.
And 25 of those are preschool. But we can definitely get back to you with regards to, we can get a count of the other Tiny Tots programs that we have and get you a number.
Yeah, through some of our, there's the 4 female counselors are doing this whole series, public policy series on childcare and early education, creating opportunity for higher quality early ed. There's a number of those kids that are in our kindergarten seats in particular are experiencing homelessness, and how do we make sure that they're accessing the highest quality seats across the city. And I think that some of your site councils provide a lot of those high quality seats. And we'll make sure that they're connected in all of that. So I'm happy to hear that and sort of encourage the continued outreach to families and youth that are experiencing homelessness.
And I also wanted to add that, recently we've been working with AGM, Associated Grant Makers. Normally they've been a steadfast sort of funder supporting a lot of our summer camp programs for a lot of young people. And this year we talked to them a little bit about sort of the intensity of the work that we do, especially knowing that in some of our sites we have homeless families that come in, but sometimes even though our fees tend to be really low, sometimes it's still not very affordable for some families. And they granted us this summer actually 121 summer camp slots for
great.
families that are homeless. So we're in the process now working with our administrative coordinators to identify those children and hopefully place them into our camps.
That's great. And I'm working with my colleagues in state government to support a bill that would grant children of families who are experiencing homelessness sort of immediate vouchers to childcare, because there's still a lot of hoops that families have to go through once they enter the shelter system to access childcare, which would also include some of this early ed work. So please let me know if there's any way that I can support that work.
Sure.
And sort of emphasize or re-emphasize the importance to connect with BPS on the work that they're doing, because in Boston Public Schools, we often identify, although it's still a challenge to identify all the kids that are experiencing homelessness, but they're younger siblings, so that aren't yet in BPS. If we can identify the older kid, we can maybe help you identify the younger kid that's not in the system yet. And then in case with Chris, with the 18, 19-year-olds that are maybe graduated out of school or have disengaged from school, we can help to identify maybe some of those older siblings so that you can connect with them. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Counselor Jackson.
Thank you very much. So I just want to be very clear. I find it actually it's unacceptable to speak about organizations when we're not going to fund them. And so if you're going to, I think you need to, in this budget, fund Project Right to put forward those programs. We don't have time. And I would note after Memorial Day, from Memorial Day to Labor Day is generally the season in which we have seen an uptick in violence in the community. And again, we're talking about Grove Hall. We're talking about an area that we've seen in the past many things happen. And it is not safe for young people, and it's definitely not safe for our seniors if young people don't have options or things to do in their neighborhood. And I hear conversations about other centers. We need to offer those services in their own community, because many of them are not able to change geography in terms of being able to go from neighborhood to neighborhood. The other area I did want to ask in terms of the street workers, is there a programming budget for street workers?
Is there a programming budget?
So is the only information I see here are salaries? So
Yeah.
are programming the supply? Do they have any?
Well,
thing other than
the street workers are similar to any other position in the department, and so we certainly look at other means to support the street workers. We raised some additional funds through our development department, which enables them to support some of the efforts. So there is some funding around that. If they need supplies and things like that, those supplies come out of the general operating budget. And so yes, there is. And the goal of street workers really is not so much to do programming, but to steer them and to steer the young men and women into existing programs. And we certainly, when needed, if they're looking to provide a specific program, we utilize the external funds to do that as well.
Okay, because what I would note is, the other homeless population that we should actually note is that most of the young men who are involved in gang violence in the city of Boston are homeless.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, and one of the most the least stable aspects of their life is actually that housing issue. And if we could get some of that taken care of, I think we could probably get our arms around many of the things that we're actually dealing with. And also, displacement and gentrification also means that people actually are moving into neighborhoods or places where they're actually in closer locale to people that they may have traditionally had some issues with, right? So there's some thoughts that we need to kind of think about there. But I would just say that things like food, and I've talked to many street workers, they buy someone pizza, they show up every day, right? And all I'm saying is that we need to be thoughtful about what's actually working, best practices that work, and we should budget for those things. Because the flip side of what you do, we're sitting here talking about a $100,000 overtime budget. The police overtime budget $70 million, right? So if we get and fund you and are proactive, then we don't have a $70 million overtime budget, right? So I just think we have to be really thoughtful about where and how we use our funds, and we should be listening to folks on these issues. The last piece I'll just say is I think we need to have this Street Safe program broken out to us, because you told us 3 years, $3 million,
3.1, yeah.
$3.1 million. We're after year 3. This is now year 4.
Yep.
And you don't have a $1.1 million budget, right? So you're not spending $1.1 million in the fourth year. So the issue is, unless people are doing volunteer work, you're not gonna. I don't understand how you carry the same number of people if we're not putting, if the city's not putting anything to meet that difference. So if you could, through the chair and to the others who asked, Councilor Campbell as well as my office, to understand that staffing component, because I think it's really critical that we have understanding of what we have on the ground relative to violence prevention in the city of Boston, because I just don't get it.
Well, I think first thing is, we're talking about, right now we're having a conversation around the fiscal budget, which is June to June.
Yep.
And when the funding was appropriated to BCYF, it was annually, so it was year to year. It didn't start out on January 1st. There was a process where we had to go out and do the interview process, identify staff, do the interview process, and get them started. So they didn't start right away. Over the time, we've had transition staff who've moved on, staff who have, for one reason or another, became other, transitioned onto the city budget. And so when we look at the dollar amount, that's probably why it's not clean.
So, so the issue though is, are we talking about the same number, right? Because what we know is places like Ruggles, where there was just a very scary shooting that occurred there, was not an area that was previously had someone assigned to it.
Actually, there's been someone assigned to Ruggles for 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
But are there areas of the city that are hotspots that have no one assigned to it?
We work closely with BPD. We work closely with probation to identify those groups that are concerned, and we identify the top 45 groups, and each one of those groups has an individual assigned to work closely with them. As we know, and depending on who you talk to, there's probably over 130 groups in the city. And certainly, we have to be intentional about how we deploy our staff. And so we clearly have to move staff around when needed. But I will tell you that all those 45 groups have a staff person who's assigned to them.
So what I would like is a breakdown of how this works. We work in fiscal year budget, and you're giving us an annual budget. That's not how we work. So I would like that to be broken down, so we have an understanding and the commitment that the same number of individuals who are currently on staff are going to be carried, not through December, because you're speaking per annum, but through the fiscal year. That's a critical component for us to be knowledgeable about. And with that said, I would say it is urgent that there is youth programming in Grove Hall. It's one of the densest areas of young people in the city of Boston. It's an area that has had its problems. And for us to not have any current services that the city is providing right now relative and paying for, to me is a crisis. And it needs to be addressed relative to the offerings that need to be there. And I appreciate, and I love Project Right. I love the work that they continue to do.
Your point is well taken. We do have youth service, youth outreach workers in and around that area, and we'll also be providing.
But I'm sorry, but we had a murder that happened there,
Absolutely.
and the youth center closed a month later, right? So that's all. I just want us to be thoughtful about how real that is, right? And we're bringing our elders in, right? So if we're not dealing with the realities of violence in that neighborhood, and we're giving less net less than we did the year before, we are putting everybody in harm's way. And the budget does not reflect a solution to how those youth services are restored. And I'm not saying you don't do anything there, but you're doing less than you did the year before and prior to the young man being killed in front of the Burke. Thank you so much.
Councilor Asabi George.
Thank you. And thank you, Councilor Jackson, for bringing up that point on the annual budget. I think it may be helpful on any items that are annualized as opposed to our fiscal year, that you just come back at that at a more appropriate time to discuss that next year's budget. I know it's certainly, there's no limitations or restrictions on when we can have conversations about budget. So I think we can do that. I was going through my notes. I thought I was done, and there's always more questions when it comes to my notes. But I think that when we talked about your partnership with Boston Public Schools, that there may be a place too to insert yourselves and the work that your community centers do with their Build BPS plan, because there is $1 billion that the mayor is looking to invest over the next 10 years into BPS. And I think that we've generally restricted the conversation around how we're using that $1 billion in BPS over that 10-year period to sort of the academic or the school space. And one of the places where I think we need to continue to grow the conversation is in athletic and recreational space, because that is part of a student's experience. And that's somewhere where your expertise can, I think, lend itself to the conversation to make sure that we're giving our kids sort of a more well-rounded experience when they're in school, and your programs certainly lend themselves to it. And I think too, over the last few years, the Parks and Recreation, I think, was over at BCYF. It's before I was on board here. So I'm curious about the relationship that continues between BCYF and Recreation and your use of the fields, and how we can make sure that that's continues to be a productive relationship, and where does that sort of not collide, because it's not a negative thing, but where does that relationship connect when it's BCYF and Recreation or Parks and Rec?
We continue to work closely with Parks and Rec department. In fact, we just collaborated with them recently on the Girls Festival. And, through the winter months, they provide lots of recreational opportunities and programs inside our buildings. So, of course, it's cold outside. The fields and things are not, playable. And so they utilize our spaces there, and vice versa. We just had a meeting yesterday about some neighborhoods concerns in East Boston, and how we can both support some of the efforts that are taking place out there. So we certainly work closely with them. This summer, BNBL will start, and it's close to 5,000 participants in BNBL, and we work collaboratively to support the work that's taking place throughout the summer.
No, that's great, and I love to hear that, because there is this indoor and outdoor relationship. And then my last comment, because it was one that I didn't make earlier, is just the importance of teaching kids to swim, both at our beaches, our city's beaches, and at our pools. It's just, I would love to see it as a high school graduation requirement that all kids learn how to swim in order to graduate, because we're a harbor city. And so much of the population ends up on either coasts, that if we can give our kids that skill, I think it's really important. It's something that I challenge my kids to learn how to swim, and they're okay swimmers. I'd feel more comfortable if they were stronger swimmers, and you play a really important role in making sure that that happens for our kids, both in the summer months, but then also I think some of the schools that do have pools are really in your facilities. So how do we make sure that our kids have that as a resource and an asset inside and outside of school? Thank you. I am all set now.
Okay. Counselor Jackson.
You know what? I want to apologize to you guys.
Okay.
And the reason why because you get the budget that the mayor gives you. And the money gets placed as best as you can. What I would simply say is that this budget that you were given by the mayor does not meet all of the needs of the young people in the city of Boston. This is not, it is, you're doing the best that you can with it, but I would say it does not meet the needs of the folks in the neighborhood that I live in, and many of the young people in particular in that neighborhood. And so I would just say it tears at my heart, because to lose year over year something that they had in places where there's a whole lot of loss and a whole lot of need is definitely moving backwards. And so I would just simply go on record. This budget actually comes from the mayor's office, and so you have to do the best that you can and stretch it as much as you can. But I think it is critical to make that a distinction and to note that. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioners, Morales, Briner, Silprizio, thank you for your time and testimony today. I'm going to move to public testimony at this time. You can feel free to sit in the gallery, but you can go sit in the gallery at this time. And I'm going to call 3 people at a time that signed up for public testimony, and you can come right down here to the podium. Carmen Jackson, Vilma Davy, Eileen Marsh, and I apologize if I mispronounce anybody's name. And then I have Diego Flores and Michael Koza, in that order.
Morning.
Hi.
I am a member of the Grove Hall Senior Citizens.
Are you Carmen? I'm sorry. Are you Carmen?
Carmen. My name is Carmen Jackman Edwards.
Thank you.
I am a member of the Grove Hall Senior Citizens Center. And I want to say I have been going there just for a couple of months. And it is a very good program since I've been going there. I have met some wonderful people. I learned to crochet. I learned to swim. Going to, on Tuesdays, we go to the aerobics, to water aerobics, and it is very good. And the program helps me. I was home. I'm retired. And I was home doing nothing. And one day, one of my friends, she said to me, "What do you do during the day?" I said, "Nothing, just sleep and go spend money that I don't have." She said, "Well, you know what? You need to come and go with me." This was a Wednesday, she said this to me. And the Thursday morning I got up, I called her. I said, what time do we have to be there? She said, I think about 10 o'clock. I said, okay, I'll pick you up. And ever since, that was in February, ever since from that day, I get up in the morning. I didn't have nothing to do before, and now I am so pleased to say that I have something to do every day. Every day you go there, and there's people that you can talk to, you can conversate with, and they're very, very nice people. The leader of the program, she is the best, and she has Ayana, and she is the best. And the people that come there, you will not believe it. You meet every day, you meet a fresh group of people, and they are so wonderful. Sometimes you don't have breakfast and you go there, and when you look, there's breakfast. You get coffee, you get tea, anything you want. You can always get there. Some days we say, oh, I don't have no lunch. When we look, there's lunch coming in. So that program is one of the best. And if we can get some funding to help with it, that would be very, 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 very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. I was the director of a senior center in Brighton for 14 years, and we were there last night for a public hearing. It's so great to hear that kind of testimony, Carmen, because our seniors cannot be isolated. You need to be with other people, and people younger than you can benefit from all your experience and knowledge. So we need you out in our neighborhoods, you know, integrating with all kinds of people, not just seniors. But thank you. I indulge myself on that. Vilma?
Yes, my name is Vilma Davy, and I agree with what she was saying. I just started about 2 months ago. I was the same testimony like her. Somebody called me. I didn't know about it and told me, and I said, wow, I need that because I get the Shai exercise, I get the yoga exercise. And yesterday, for the first time, Tuesday, I went swimming. So I'm getting all the exercise I need, and I want to thank you all for passing the budget for next year. And we're here to say to you, continue passing that budget because they're need in our community. And like she said, we get together, we get to know people we haven't seen before. Right. So I appreciate this program. And I thank you for our leaders that are there to serve us.
Thank you very much.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Eileen Marsh. I have been a registered nurse for over 40 years. And I also worked with the Alzheimer's community for many, many years. And where are the counselors? They're not going to be hearing us?
They can hear you in their, they can hear you in the offices too.
Good.
Okay.
We can hear you.
And you're being recorded.
I'm not seeing them, but I'm glad that they're hearing. Yeah. And I look at it from the outside going in, and I have been actually recruiting people.
Good.
Family members, send your family member to that community center. And I have gone into the place and there was no TV. That was a plus. Mm-hmm. I walked in there and they were active. There's so much going on. The elderly need facilities like that in order to help them. And they've got a wonderful staff, Ms. Adi and Yana and some other helpers. And they do a good job with the elderly. I won't prolong this anymore, but it's one of the better programs that I've seen in the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
City Councilors, I want to thank you for hosting this hearing and also want to thank you all for your support of all the stuff that we're actually doing. I'm here to, on behalf of Project Right, I'm here to express our support to expand the budget for the Boston Centers for Youth and Families. Prevention opportunities and resources are very critical for the well-being of our families. I was fortunate to work with Adi a few years ago, and we actually started a third Tuesday of the month senior workshop, and we did that for several years before it expanded into the community center. You can really see the need for it. At the same time, as you know, Grove Hall is very densely populated, and at this time, there are no direct city-funded youth programming being offered in city facilities or Boston Public School buildings during the evenings or weekends in the Grove Hall neighborhood. Why that's important is that on Friday nights for the last 10 years, Project Right, in partnership with the Roxbury YMCA, does offer regularly Friday night late teen nights from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. I don't get home till 1 a.m. many times because we're doing rides. We're delivering youth all over the city who used to live in Grove Hall. They, as you know, families are very transitory. They still come back to Grove Hall or they go to school in Grove Hall. So we're always doing rides. We'll probably do this 46 Friday nights per year. That draws between 70 to 130 teenagers per night. If we go back to that horrific night when Officer Moynihan was shot and critically injured, we had over 120 teenagers at Roxbury Y and another 70 teenagers through Mike's and Elle's League at Grove Hall Community Center who were at a safe setting and not out on the street during that night. Because as we remember back to that tragic incident, we had some confrontations going on, but fortunately we had to have a couple hundred teens in another setting and we were able to talk to them. We actually had officers coming through and talking to us anyways as we were kind of going through that. During the past year, we've been fortunate through working with Boston Centers for Youth and Families and through the Burke, we have run some evening programming since July, whether it's basketball, dodgeball, or video games out of the Burke Gym and the Grove Hall Community Center twice a week up until when the basketball season started. As you know, when you have shared facilities, you know, we have to kind of navigate the school sports sessions, and that it does kind of impact. But we were, you know, with very limited outreach, very limited funding, because we weren't sure what the sports schedule was, we were easily drawing 40 to 60 young people during that time period. In fact, Counselor Campbell saw some of that energy of that young people during our community meeting. Even though they were up on the third floor, we could still feel the energy in our meeting on the first floor. We can significantly expand, and we're looking forward. We had a meeting yesterday to talk about how can we expand this outreach with young people, how we can utilize the Bird Gym, how we can use the Grove Hall Community Center space for 4 nights a week, but we need your help. We need you, one of the things that we need you to do is really kind of push the foundations. The foundations are really starting to withdraw their support for after-school programming and violence prevention programming. They're now into very measurable outcomes, which is important, but and then they say, well, how can you measure anti-violence prevention work? Well, people didn't get killed, but you know, it doesn't come in a very neat package, and we need your help and the mayor's help to really kind of push for our foundations to kind of step up in this era of declining federal dollars. And then, you know, today's Globe is talking about the impact on perhaps on the state budget. You know, we might be losing, you know, a lot of your city programs, a lot of your nonprofits may be losing some of your state funding because of declining state revenues. So we really do need your help in terms of that. So please support Councilor Campbell's request for additional $500,000 in youth development programming. I think there are deserts in our city neighborhoods where you have densely populated populations of young people with significantly limited opportunities and programmings that these funds would provide positive alternatives for these disconnected teenagers. One of the things that we did, one of our summers, we actually, with Boston EMS, we did a emergency preparedness workshop that had both our seniors, but also had our young people coming to that senior workshop. And it was, you know, we want to do more of that intergenerational work because it's very important for our young people to learn from our seniors and their experiences. We also want to work with you on the school building process. The Grove Hall Community Center, the Grove Hall Library, and the Burke renovation was a 14-year process. We went through 3 different design processes, mainly because of budget cuts. Governor Weld at that time actually tried to line item veto out that budget. We had to work with Representative St. Fleur and Senator Wilkerson at the time to get money. So we went through 3 different design processes for the Burke. It got really scaled down. We actually had a big field originally, regulation-sized field, but what ended up is what's there. We clearly learned from that. We clearly shared facilities are not optimal, but it's better than nothing when you have nothing. But we are willing to work with the city council to try to figure out how we move forward. We also want to work with you in the school department. How we utilize school facilities? As you know, I'm one of the co-founders of the Frederick. We had a many-year process in terms of that. We took a quarry field that was they had sneaker trees that had to get bulldozed by Mayor Menino and the National Guard. Turned that into a school. Students there do not know the history of that site. All they know that it's a school that provides a lot of great resources. At times, the school and community groups like Project Right want to do after school or evening events or work with young people at the school in the gym. A lot of times the gym is booked out by teams that are doing AAU work. rather than doing programming for neighborhood youth. So we want to work with you to kind of work on how can we ensure that some of our neighborhood facilities that are in areas where there are not direct youth programming for young people, that they get slotted for neighborhood programs or schools, because even the school sometimes the Frederick can provide activities in their own facility. Finally, we want to again, we've been working with our counselors to look at the field across the street from the Burke on Geneva Ave and turn that into a mini multi-purpose field. Right now, it's going from D&D to it's being transferred from D&D to the parks. There's been a little bit of hiccup in terms of that. We want you to help make sure that that gets expedited. We want to work with parks to really see that become a mini multi-purpose field, because right now, for the Burke and the Dearborn students who are there right now, they have to go down to Ceylon or to Ronan Park. A lot of times when we come, I see the football players sitting on the back steps on Geneva Ave because the bus is late. Rather, they could just kind of walk across the street, have a mini multi-purpose field, work on their skill development, which all our kids need skill development, because they don't do enough skill development. They just watch the video highlights and think that's all they need to do. But we can really do a lot with that mini multi-purpose field. We can do stuff during the day with the community center, with the schools, and follow through on this. So thank you for hosting this hearing. We look forward to working with you. And again, thank you for your past support.
Thank you. Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Councilor Siomo. I'll be very brief. I just wanted to first thank many of my D4 residents for coming out and testifying. But Mike, just last night, actually, at the Parks budget hearing that we had in Brighton, chaired by Councilor Siomo, I asked that very question, and Commissioner Cook agrees that in that area of Grove Hall, we definitely need field and open space for our young people, and they're in preliminary discussions with D&D about how they do that. Right now, they're working on something in another part of District 4 in Rosendale, where they've attached, I think, $50,000 to really study that, how parks can take that from D&D. So I'm hoping that they'll do something similar for that parcel. And it's really exciting, actually, to hear about the senior programming at the Grove Hall Community Center. We don't often get folks coming in and talking about the highlights and the positive things. And frankly, our commissioners, our employees, our team, and our city needs to hear about the positive rollouts in the community. So thank you to our seniors and our elders for coming and testifying about the incredible programming at the Grove Hall Community Center. Thank you guys for your advocacy, and thank you for being partners in the work. And thank you, Councilor Siomo.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for their testimony today. We are going to adjourn the BCYF FY18 budget, docket 0536 through 0538. and 0539 through 0543. I want to thank the commissioners as well as the great staff of BCYF for all you do, and this hearing stands adjourned. Regarding the revolving fund that is managed through the Boston Centers of Youth and Families, docket 0554, message and order authorizing a limit for the Boston Center for Youth and Families revolving fund for fiscal year 2018 to pay salaries and benefits of employees and to purchase supplies and equipment necessary to operate City Hall childcare. This revolving fund shall be credited with any and all receipts from tuition paid by parents or guardians for children enrolled at the center. Receipts and resulting expenditures from this fund shall not exceed $750,000. I want to welcome my colleagues to my left, Nanisa Sabi George, City Councilor at Large. To my right, District City Councilor Andrea Campbell, and to my far right, District City Councilor Matt O'Malley. I'd like to remind folks that this is a public hearing being broadcast on RCN Channel 882 and Comcast Channel 8. I'd like to ask people to silence their electronic devices. We will also take public testimony at the conclusion of the presentation and question period. Sign-in sheets to my left, we ask that folks state their name, affiliation, and residence. And at this point, I'd like to welcome Commissioner Morales and Deputy Commissioner Michael Saprizio for opening statements.
Thank you, Councilor Siomo. The revolving amendment, I'm going to actually amend over to Michael Saprizio, has best knowledge in regards to that program and how it operates.
Yeah, so the revolving fund for City Hall Child Care allows us to collect the revenue that's generated through the fees that the families pay in order for their children to attend the program here at City Hall Child Care. So what it allows us to it allows us to cover the salaries, equipment, and different things in their health benefits that relate to the cost generated through the operation of the City Hall Child Care program. We do run into a deficit. This program usually runs at a deficit, but it's important to us to maintain the affordability of the program. But we have recently gone through a couple of fee increases recently to try to help close the deficit because the program still is very well below market rate for childcare. We actually have a fee increase coming up this month, 5% increase, which is similar to what we did last year. That'll raise the weekly fees slightly. It's about on average, about $15 a week for the families. But again, just trying to close the deficit that we've seen in this program with the revolving fund being capped at $750,000 goes mostly towards covering the staff salaries is the biggest expense related to that. And also we've made some changes with regards to a small fee related to the wait list and also a small fee with regard to an enrollment fee when kids are accepted into the program that are pretty common in the childcare industry. So those are some ways that we've tried to help generate some additional revenue to help make the program sustainable. But this revolving fund does help us offset the costs associated with the City Hall Child Care program.
Great. Is this a self-sustaining program, though? Even though you're running a deficit, the cash flow enables you to adjust where you are. But what kind of supplement does the city offer?
So, I mean, ultimately what the city offers is the money that they'll end up allocating at the end of the year to cover whatever deficit is generated. We just continue throughout the year to run with the revolving fund of fees coming in. And again, every year to year, we've worked to try to make that gap smaller and smaller, while still, like I said, again, maintaining the affordability of the program. But we still do run at a deficit, and the city obviously finds the resources necessary to close the deficit at the end of the year. So that could be seen as a city investment at that point to cover the deficit.
So the tuition basically is the weekly fee for a slot.
Mm-hmm.
And do you take any vouchers or anything in that realm?
Yep, we do have EEC vouchers that we do accept also.
Brilliant.
So it's between the voucher slots and the general slots that are available to folks.
Right. And obviously, they don't have to pay any kind of lease payments, which also probably help to keep the cost low.
Yep. There's no, obviously the space is within City Hall here, so there is no cost to operate the space. It's all covered again. That could be seen as another city, obviously investment where the space is provided, utilities and different things like that are all covered.
Great. Do my colleagues have any questions? Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Councilor Campbell.
What's the enrollment fee and then what's the weekly fee?
Okay, so the enrollment fee is new, and it was in an attempt again to try to, just a small way at trying to close the deficit. And again, it's pretty standard if you do some research around different childcare programs across the city. It's pretty standard to have an enrollment fee. So when kids are provided a slot, there's a small one-time enrollment fee that's due. I believe it's $100. And then the fee, as of May 29th, when the new fee increase comes into place, an infant will be $315 a week, a toddler $280, and a preschool will be $212. And again, if you look at the cost of alternative daycare programs, that is very affordable and below market. But again, we're trying to maintain collective bargaining increases and benefits to the employees while still trying to keep it affordable. So it's definitely a tough balancing act. But again, over the past couple of years with the fee increases and those small fees we talked about, we're trying to close that gap as much as we can.
Very helpful. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Councilor O'Malley, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say, gentlemen, not only is it affordable, but it is the highest quality. I have family members, dear friends who have taken advantage of it. It's great work and wanted to, again, her name was mentioned earlier, but Miss Grace, who runs the Orenberger Child Care, just does a phenomenal job. So thank you guys for that. And obviously, I think this is a no-brainer and look forward to seeing it continued. I guess my question would be, is there any conversation about growing the program, hiring additional staff to service more children?
I guess, well, Counselor, I think we'd love to expand the program, but I think currently, as you know, as we discussed, there is a deficit, and also I think there's a little bit of a space restriction with regards to the space. So I think ultimately, if we'd ever look to want to increase it, we would have to look probably at an alternative space. I think with EEC being EEC licensed, there's requirements around the ratios and space and different things. So I think we're kind of at our max right now. And the staff does do an excellent job here at City Hall, and we've always gotten good feedback from folks that take advantage of the program, and we're very proud of our staff that do an excellent job providing this care. And again, I think folks, especially with regards to the infant and toddler, which is we've seen a need there. And not so much with the preschool, like I said earlier in the previous hearing around with, the mayor and BPS working so hard to offer more K0 slots. A lot of people are starting to rely on the public school system to provide that preschool education, which, as I talked about earlier, we could possibly see in our exploring possible increase in infant and toddler slots to help accommodate the need to hopefully, shorten the wait list and take and be more of a resource for the need that we see, whereas it's kind of shifting away from preschool and more towards the infant toddler. But again, I think increasing the number of kids we have would start to become more of a space conversation.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Will and Mike, for today's testimony. We appreciate all you guys do for our city with youth and family in particular, and the elderly, obviously, which might have to go in the title someday. But anyway, I just want to thank you again, and this hearing stands adjourned.